Hey everyone, it's Camber here with the Yo Pro No. I am here this morning with Vineet Raghu, 29-year-old research fellow up in Boston. And as is tradition, I always like to share how we were connected to each interviewee. And so you might remember Shravani from several months ago. Gosh, it might even be at the end of 2020 now. She is in finance at PNC Bank, and we got connected through another former interviewee, and she connected us with Vineet. So, Vineet, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Cameron.
So let's just get started with a brief background on yourself. So where you're from, what you're currently doing, and then we'll pause and kind of break down some of those details.
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born and raised there. I went to school at the University of Pittsburgh, did my bachelor's and my PhD at Pitt. And then recently, last 2 years, I moved to Boston to join this research fellowship at Mass General Hospital, one of Harvard's affiliated hospitals here in Boston.
Great, thank you. That was very concise. So let's go back a little bit. How did you decide that this was the path for you? How did you know that you wanted to get your PhD? What did that process look like?
Yeah, so actually going into college, I didn't even know what a PhD was. I feel like we don't hear about that much in high school as like one of the possible career paths you can take. So I entered college actually pre-med, planning to be a doctor. About halfway, so I'd gone through that whole process, taken all the prereqs. I'd even taken my like admissions tests for medical school and all of that. But about halfway through, so I think a couple of things happened in my life that made me want to switch. One is my brother is actually a physician, so I was kind of seeing him go through the process, like kind of what medical school is like. It didn't feel like a good fit for me. I think the schedule is extremely rigid. It's like most of your free time is dedicated to that profession. That's kind of what you do and who you are, which isn't what I really wanted from my work life, I think. But the second thing that happened was, I started taking just computer science classes just out of interest. And I really enjoed it. Like, I feel like every day was like, you're kind of solving these like little puzzles. It's like you're in one of those puzzle books. And that's your job, which I thought was really cool. And that plus like the added flexibility of, working from home and kind of working on your own time, I thought was just like a perfect fit for my lifestyle. And that's kind of what pushed me in that direction instead of medicine.
Great. Thanks for giving that overview. I think that for anyone who, I believe, just from my own college experience, I knew there were a lot of people who came in wanting to do pre-med, and then they kind of recognize, wow, this actually doesn't look like what I want my life to, be in the future. And so it's great that you had that understanding, and then that, thankfully you found something immediately after that you felt was the right path. So
yeah.
What is your PhD in? Can you remind us of that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, it was nice. I actually ended up combining computer science with all the medical classes I had taken. So my PhD was in a computational biology lab. And so what that means is basically we try to use computer science and new technology to solve questions in biology or to improve human health in some way with new apps, new tools that biological researchers could use, but also the doctors could use to make healthcare better. It's really the goal of the PhD. And so my research was about how we can develop computer science methods to help understand causes of disease, especially like genetic causes of disease. So who is just at baseline increased risk. So yeah, in graduate school during my PhD at Pitt, my research was focused on trying to figure out like genetic causes of disease. So based on your genes, what are you at increased risk for things like cancer or cardiovascular disease? And now in my postdoctoral fellowship at MGH, what I'm trying to do now is look at imaging. So things like a chest X-ray or a chest CT, can we use those images to figure out who's at higher risk and might need more aggressive counseling or risk management in some way to reduce their risk of future disease.
Wow. So I would imagine that over the last year, things have been crazy because of the industry that you are in every day. Am I correct with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, there was just suddenly a huge push. Like no matter what research you were doing before, it was like a huge push that now we all have to work on COVID, which was exciting. You know, it was like finally like what you were doing was in demand. And there's a lot of cool breakthroughs from the science community, I think, on handling COVID.
Right.
I don't think we were totally part of that, but we worked in that direction.
Yeah, you were in that direction, and I would imagine that you were certainly impacted in some form or fashion. So thanks for sharing all of that. Sure. Can you tell us what your day-to-day looks like? So you kind of explained what the role is and what you've done over the last few years, but what does your current day-to-day look like as a research fellow?
Yeah, so it's a combination. I think it's similar to most technology jobs in industry as well. It's a combination of meetings with supervisors and other researchers and other labs, along with, you know, programming, computer programming, trying to develop these tools. But then a big part in academia that's probably not there in industry is writing. So, you know, a lot of our job is writing papers, writing posts, sharing our knowledge that we've learned in some way. And then also another thing that's unique to academia is we constantly have to ask for money, especially as we start becoming faculty. So writing grants is like a huge part of the job. You know, pretty much every day you spend some amount of time either thinking about a grant or writing a grant application.
Right. That's definitely important to talk about because for some people, that is not what they want to be doing. And I'm sure you probably didn't say, you know, Vineet, several years ago, that's what I want to be doing. But how have you adapted? How have you adapted to some of those challenges?
Yeah. So, yeah, several years ago, I think I just wanted to be doing the building the tools part. I had no idea about the meetings. I had no idea about the grants. But I think like, well, one thing is just managing time. That's probably the hardest part because you have all of these different avenues that you need to be thinking about at the same time. For me, it's like to-do lists. It's this Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you're familiar, but basically you break up your day into like 30 minutes. Yeah, sure. So you just break up your day into 30-minute sprints. So you do a sprint in one task that you have pressing. You take a quick break, and then you repeat that throughout the day. I think that really helps like focus your attention on one thing without getting distracted with all the other things that you have going on in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I probably need to do that.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing. The other thing is just the mindset. Like, yeah, this may not be what you wanted, exactly what you wanted from your job at the beginning, but I think there's a lot of, what I've learned is there's a lot you can learn from writing these grants and from going to these meetings that can help you to do what you want to do, which is to build the tools that actually help.
It's all transferable. And I mean, right. I know that my job is very different. Like my full-time day job is very different from what you do, but I write grants for a living too. And development. And so it's so transferable. You know, I don't think that I will probably ever go into your line of work and you probably won't ever go into my line of work, but there's comparison, you know, there's things that are definitely applicable to other fields. And that's something that I always want the audience to take away. So as you are, you know, as people are listening or watching this interview, what is something that you want people to know about your specific field if you haven't already shared it today?
About my field. Yeah, I think academia is not well understood. Like, so you know, the way I see it is that, you know, industry is what takes ideas and actually builds products. And that's what we all get to use every day. Yeah, I think we're just like a step back in that pipeline. So what we try to do is just kind of generate ideas and say that, hey, this might actually work. Somebody with more resources than us should look into this, you know, like the Googles or the Facebooks of the world. Mm-hmm. And, you know, because we're not like well known to a lot of people, I think that's kind of not understood, but that's like where we are in the pipeline. I think it's an important part of the pipeline. It's like a lot of our a lot of the scientific advancement, it started in academia and then transferred to these big companies. So,
Right.
um,
Cool. Okay, so just mindful of time here, I'm going to wrap up with a few more questions. And I do want to hear about life as a young professional for you outside of the office.
sure.
But my last professional question is, tell us a little bit about a specific hardship that you faced since you graduated college and how you overcame that hardship.
Yeah, well, I think one of the hardest parts in my career was so I was writing my thesis in graduate school. This was like the same time that actually my grandmother had passed away in India. And we were very close. She had lived with us like throughout growing up.
Really?
Yeah. And so writing a thesis, like that's pretty much a full-time job. So you're sitting there in the office kind of by yourself for like 10 hours a day, basically, just writing and finding references. Again, how I dealt with that, I think it was just, that's when I really realized, like, I think in research, you kind of get lost and you just kind of like sit at the office and just do your thing. But that's when I realized like taking breaks and like, connecting with people is really important. So I tried to like allocate a lot more time, especially then when I was like, not in an emotionally like great state.
Yeah.
To just connect with my friends as much as possible. Again, using this sort of like time management techniques, like, make sure you do your work for some amount of time, but then like, take care of yourself some other time. I think in academia, actually, like a lot of us lose track of that. There's no, it's hard because there's no like deadlines put on us. So we have to come up with the deadlines ourselves. And that can be like very mentally consuming.
That's a great thing.
So, but yeah, it's, doing what you can every day, I think, and still living your life is what I really learned from that time period.
Yeah. And I think everyone can, benefit from hearing that advice. I'm sorry about your grandmother. And I do think that is, things are thrown at us and you have to learn how to adapt and react. And sounds like you've found something, especially in a field where there really are no deadlines. That is, you create your deadlines. And so that is tough. But thank you for sharing that, because I know that talking about hardships can be a vulnerable thing. So wrapping things up, Vineet, can you tell us, what is life like outside of the office for you as a young professional? What do you enjoy doing? What do you fill your time with? We're talking all about time management. What's something that makes you, happy?
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting because I came to Boston like 2 years ago, and then 4 months later, COVID had started. So, it's hard to meet people at that time. So I think my life at that point was like, trying to stay connected with my older friends that I had from college and graduate school through Zoom, things like trivia. I think in normal times though, like, I always try to not say no to my friends. So if we have like something going on, even if I have work to do, I try to like prioritize, meeting with friends, staying connected. The things I love to do, I love to play sports. I love to watch sports. That's probably it's probably number one. I feel weird when I sit at home all day. I like need to get outside for like at least a little bit.
Right.
So, summer months are great. And I think this post-COVID world that we're heading into is going to be great too. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's important to do all those things outside of work as well. So I'm glad that you have things like that to keep you motivated and keep you going. So any last minute words of advice, Vineet, before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think for my story, like the main advice is just, keep an open mind. Don't pigeonhole yourself into what you thought you wanted to do right when you finished high school or even earlier. Use college as a time to explore. If you don't go to college, still, explore. There's so many online resources that you can use to find, new interests or to combine new interests with the things that you originally wanted to do. And I think especially as we're moving forward, it's going to be really important because there's just so much access to knowledge pretty much everywhere. So, figure out like what problem do you want to solve and not necessarily how do you want to solve it. That can come from just exploring. So.
I love that. Thank you. I think that's a great way to end the interview. So Vineet, thank you so much for being on the YoPro Know today.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.